Two aggressive door-to-door salesmen are on my elderly neighbor's porch, pressuring her. She's already said no twice, but they won't stop. I can hear the tremor in her voice through my open window. And that's when something inside me snaps. I lean out that window and tell them she said no. Leave. One of them looks at me with absolute contempt and says, "Mind your own business." What happened next? I became their personal nightmare for the next hour, and years later, I still smile thinking about it. If you've ever felt powerless watching someone get taken advantage of, or if you've ever wanted to stand up to bullies but didn't know how, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now, subscribe if you love satisfying justice stories, and buckle up, because today's story is about protecting the vulnerable, respecting boundaries, and teaching two predators a lesson they'll never forget. Many years ago, my partner and I bought our first house. We were young, excited, and completely unprepared for what we were walking into. See, our street wasn't like most neighborhoods. Every single house on that block had been built in the 1950s, and almost everyone still living there was an original owner. We're talking about seniors in their 70s and 80s, people who had raised their families on that street, who knew every crack in the sidewalk, every tree that had been planted decades ago. We were the young newcomers, the fresh blood in a sea of white hair and gentle smiles. And honestly, we loved it. These weren't just neighbors. They became our extended family. Mrs. Patterson next door would wave from her garden every morning. Mr. Chen across the street would sit on his porch and tell us stories about what the neighborhood looked like before the big oak trees had grown so tall. These people had history, dignity, and deserved respect. But here's the thing about elderly folks living alone. They need help sometimes, not because they're weak, but because age makes certain things harder. Heavy garbage cans, light bulbs that need changing in high fixtures, gutters that clog during storms and need clearing before water damage sets in. So we helped, not because we wanted something in return, but because it was the right thing to do. We'd haul Mrs. Patterson's garbage bins to the curb every Tuesday. We'd climb ladders to replace outdoor lights. During heavy rains, I'd be out there in my boots and rain jacket, pulling leaves and debris from the street gutters to prevent flooding. It felt good. It felt like community, like we were part of something real. But there was one problem that kept eating at me, one invasive species that wouldn't leave our peaceful street alone. Predatory door-to-door salesmen. You know the type I'm talking about. Aggressive, pushy, the kind who see a street full of elderly people and think, jackpot. They'd come through every few weeks like clockwork, peddling overpriced home security systems, magazine subscriptions, solar panels, lawn services, whatever scam they were running that month. We had no soliciting signs, multiple ones. They didn't care. Those signs might as well have been invisible. At first, I'd answer the door politely. Not interested, thanks. But they wouldn't leave, and they'd wedge their foot in the door, literally, and launch into their pitch. They'd use guilt tactics. Don't you care about your family's safety? They'd use fear tactics. Break-ins are up 40% in this area. They'd use pressure tactics. This deal expires today. And I watched them do the same thing to my elderly neighbors. People who were lonely, who were polite to a fault, who had grown up in an era where you didn't slam doors in people's faces. People who were vulnerable. I started getting angry. Not just annoyed, angry. That burning kind of anger that sits in your chest and smolders. And here's the thing about me. I don't mind popping off when someone deserves it. I really don't. You want to play stupid games? I'll hand you your prize, wrapped in profanity and tied with a bow of righteous indignation. So I started giving these salesmen hell. Every single one who darkened my doorstep got a performance. I'd point to the no soliciting sign and ask if they could read. I'd lecture them about wasting people's time. I'd tell them exactly where they could shove their limited time offer. Those fools paid a high price for their inability to respect a simple sign. Most would leave quickly after that. Word probably spread in their little predatory circles. Avoid the house with the angry young person who won't shut up. But then came the day that changed everything. It was a warm afternoon. I was home working, windows open to let in the breeze. I heard the doorbell ring, mine, and I could already feel my blood pressure rising. I looked out and saw two men on my porch. Suits, fake smiles, clipboards. The uniform of the door-to-door predator. I opened the door already armed for battle. They started their pitch. I didn't let them get 3 sentences in. I pointed to the no soliciting sign, pointed right at it, and asked them if they were illiterate or just disrespectful. I told them this was a neighborhood full of elderly residents who didn't appreciate being harassed. I told them to take their scam and get off my property. They didn't like that. Not one bit. The first guy, the shorter one with slicked back hair, got this offended look on his face. Like I was the one being unreasonable. Like I was the problem. The second guy, taller, trying to play peacemaker but with this condescending smirk, mumbled something about just trying to make a living. I didn't care. I shut the door. But here's where they made their fatal mistake. Instead of leaving, instead of taking the hint, and instead of walking back to their car and moving on with their day, they went next door, to Mrs. Patterson's house. My window was open. I could hear everything. I heard her door open. I heard her sweet, polite voice. "Oh, I'm not interested, thank you." And I heard them keep talking, keep pushing. She said no again, clearer this time. "No, thank you, I'm not interested." They kept talking. Something inside me ignited. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was protective fury, that primal instinct that kicks in when you see someone you care about being threatened. I walked to my window and leaned out. "She said no," I called out, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You need to leave." The shorter one, the offended one, turned to look at me. And instead of having even an ounce of self-awareness, and instead of recognizing that he was about to poke a bear that was already awake and pissed off, he said the words that sealed his fate. "Mind your own business." Oh, that was it. That was the moment. I don't even remember walking to my front door. I don't remember stepping outside. But suddenly I was on Mrs. Patterson's porch, and these two clowns were backing up because the look on my face probably suggested I was capable of violence. I wasn't, but they didn't know that. I started talking. No, I started lecturing, and I didn't hold back. I asked them if they understood the concept of consent, if they understood that no is a complete sentence. I asked them what part of "I'm not interested" was confusing to their clearly malfunctioning brains. I told them that preying on elderly people made them not just scammers, but cowards. I told them that every single house on this street had residents who deserved respect, dignity, and the right to say no once and be heard. I was loud. I was vitriolic. I was on a roll. Mrs. Patterson was watching from behind her screen door, and I could see the relief in her eyes. The two salesmen looked stunned. The shorter one tried to argue, tried to defend himself, but I wasn't having it. I pointed toward the sidewalk and told them to move. Now. Grudgingly, like children being sent to time out, they turned and started walking. They headed toward the next house, probably thinking they could just ignore me and continue their day. That's when I made my declaration. As they reached the sidewalk, I pointed to every single house on the street, one by one. "See all these houses?" I said, my voice carrying down the entire block. "Every single one is under my protection." They stopped walking, turned to look at me like I was crazy. "You want to keep going?" I continued. "Fine, but I will follow you. To each house. and I will stand there and monitor every interaction. And if they say no, even once, and you don't immediately leave, you'll get another lecture. And trust me, I can do this all day." I wasn't bluffing. I was dead serious. The taller one looked at his partner. There was this moment of silent communication between them, like they were trying to decide if I was insane or just committed. They chose to test me. They walked to the next house. I followed. The pursuit. Guardian of the block. I stayed about 10 feet behind them, close enough to hear every word. They knocked on Mr. Chen's door. He answered. They started their pitch. Mr. Chen, bless him, said, "No thank you," within 30 seconds. They tried to keep talking. I cleared my throat. Loudly. They looked back at me. I raised my eyebrows. Waiting. They moved on. Next house. Mrs. Kowalski. Same thing. She said no. They hesitated. I took a step closer. They left immediately. Next house. Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez. No. They left. By the 5th house, they weren't even trying anymore. They'd knock, someone would answer, they'd mumble something about home services, and the second they heard no thanks, they were retreating before I could say a word. I followed them all the way to the end of the street. Every single house. By the time we reached the corner, the shorter one was red-faced and furious. The taller one just looked defeated. They got in their car, a beat-up sedan with out-of-state plates, and drove away. I stood on that corner and watched them disappear. And I smiled. The best part? They never came back. Not those two specifically. And honestly, for months afterward, door-to-door salesmen seemed to avoid our street entirely. It was like I'd marked our territory, and word had spread in whatever seedy network these people operate in. My neighbors noticed. Mrs. Patterson brought me homemade cookies the next day and told me I was her hero. Mr. Chen gave me a thumbs up every time he saw me for weeks. Mrs. Kowalski told me at the neighborhood block party that she'd always been too polite to shut the door on salesmen, but watching me handle those rude men made her feel safer. That's the thing about standing up for others. You don't just protect them in that moment. You empower them. You remind them that they have the right to say no, that their boundaries matter, that someone has their back. Those two salesmen wanted to make money off vulnerable people. Instead, they got followed down an entire street by someone who refused to let them. They got humiliated. They got a lecture they'll probably never forget. And they definitely didn't make any sales that day. Justice doesn't always come from the legal system or karma taking its sweet time. Sometimes justice is immediate, personal, and deeply satisfying. All these years later, I still think about that day. I still smile when I remember the look on their faces when I told them the whole street was under my protection. It reminds me that standing up for what's right doesn't require a cape or superpowers, just the willingness to speak up when someone can't speak for themselves. As we all have moments where we can choose to be silent or to act. That day, I chose to act, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. So, what did you think? If this story gave you that warm, fuzzy feeling of justice being served, smash that like button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever stood up for someone who was being taken advantage of? What happened? I want to hear your stories. And if you love revenge tales where the good guys win, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because I've got plenty more where this came from. Remember, respect boundaries, protect your community, and never let predators think they can get away with it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.